Welcome to Silent Terror. Tonight I have a story that will make you question reality itself. A hidden room, a twisted reflection, and a nightmare that refuses to fade. If you enjoy terrifying real-life encounters and disturbing paranormal experiences, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now, turn off the lights and listen closely. Some houses hold secrets, and some doors should never be opened. Ethan never believed in ghosts. He had always been a rational man, dismissing strange occurrences as coincidence or tricks of the mind. But the night he found the hidden door in his attic, everything changed. 3 years in this old Victorian house, and he had never noticed it before. It stood against the farthest wall, a door with an unsettlingly pristine brass knob, as if it had been placed there overnight. His fingers tingled as he reached for it. The metal was cold, too cold. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit hallway that seemed impossibly long. The walls were lined with flickering lanterns, casting grotesque shadows that shifted like living things. The air was thick, carrying the scent of damp wood and something metallic. Blood, maybe. A part of Ethan screamed at him to leave, to close the door and never look back. But something called to him. He stepped inside. The hallway led to a room that shouldn't exist. It was his bedroom, down to the smallest detail, but with subtle, unsettling differences. His bed was in the wrong position. The nightstand held an old-fashioned alarm clock he had never owned. And then he saw the photo on the dresser. A picture of him, but older, drained, his expression hollow, his reflection staring back at him from a future that should never be. And then he saw it. A figure sat on the bed, facing away. A man his exact height, build, even his breathing was identical. Ethan's breath hitched, his pulse pounded in his ears. "Hello," he whispered. The figure twitched. Slowly, agonizingly, it turned its head. Ethan nearly collapsed in terror. It was him, but wrong. His face was stretched, his eyes sunken and hollow. His mouth curved into a sickening, inhuman grin. And then, in a voice like broken glass, it spoke. "I was waiting." The air around Ethan turned ice cold. The walls trembled. The door behind him slammed shut with a deafening bang. The lanterns flickered wildly, then went dark. Total blackness. Then whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping, growing louder, pressing in from every direction. He felt something crawl up his arm. Cold, skeletal fingers wrapping around his wrist. Panic surged through him. He yanked away and sprinted for the door, clawing at the handle. Locked. The whispers turned into shrieks. He felt himself grab his shoulder from behind. With a final desperate lunge, Ethan threw his body against the door. It burst open. He tumbled onto the attic floor. Silence. The room was gone. No door, just a solid wall. Heart pounding, he stumbled down the stairs and out into the cold night air. He never went back inside. The house went on the market the next day. A few weeks later, a young couple moved in. They laughed at the ghost stories, thought the house was charming. One night, the husband decided to explore the attic. He noticed something strange. A door where none had been before. Some places should remain forgotten. Some doors should never be opened. Because once the unknown finds its way in, it never leaves. If you ever find a door that wasn't there before, ask yourself, do you really want to know what's behind it? Because once you step through, you may never come back. Darkness lingers, but the nightmare isn't over yet. What you've heard so far is just a glimpse of the horrors lurking in the shadows. Now, brace yourself for the next story. Have you ever worked the night shift at a hospital? It's different from the day, quieter, too quiet. The hallways stretch longer than they should. The lights flicker more often. And sometimes, you hear things you shouldn't. I used to think hospitals were places of healing, but after what happened at St. Mark's, I know the truth. Hospitals don't just treat the living, they house the dead, and some never leave. It was just past 3 a.m. when it started. The hospital was nearly empty. The only sounds were the faint beeping of heart monitors and the occasional rustle of papers at the nurse's station. Then the call button for room 206 lit up. I stared at it, my pulse spiking. That wasn't possible. Building B had been shut down for years. I hesitated before checking the security monitors. The camera feed for Building B, just static. I should have ignored it. But hospital policy is clear. Always check a call button, even if the room is supposed to be empty. I grabbed a flashlight and made my way down the dimly lit hallway. The doors to Building B should have been chained shut. But tonight, the chains were gone. The doors hung wide open, leading into darkness. As soon as I stepped inside, the temperature dropped. The air felt thick, like I was walking through water. The emergency lights buzzed overhead, barely holding on to life. My footsteps echoed through the abandoned wing. And then I saw it. Room 206. The door was slightly open. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. Everything looked normal. The bed was made. The call button was still blinking. But the chair next to the bed wasn't empty. A man sat there, wearing a faded hospital gown. His head was lowered and he was whispering something over and over. I couldn't understand the words. "Sir," I whispered. The whispering stopped. Then the man slowly turned to face me, but his body didn't move. Only his head twisted all the way around. His eyes were hollow, black, empty. I ran. I sprinted toward the exit, my heart pounding. But something was wrong. The hallway was longer than before. The doors were missing. Behind me, I heard it. Bare feet slapping against the floor. Running. Fast. But I didn't dare look back. I just ran faster. But the hallway kept stretching. Then, the lights went out. The darkness was suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, ding! An elevator. The doors slid open, revealing a brightly lit interior. Without thinking, I rushed inside and frantically pressed the close door button. The doors started to close, but just before they shut completely, I saw him, standing inches away, his mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. And just before the doors sealed shut, he whispered my name. The next morning, they found me inside the elevator, unconscious. The security footage. It showed me walking into Building B, but I never came out. Instead, at exactly 3:15 a.m., the security feed for room 206 flickered back on. For just 1 second, a single frame appeared. It showed a man standing in the hallway, staring directly into the camera. And behind him, the door to room 206 was closing, on its own. They told me it was a nightmare, that I imagined it. But I know what I saw, and I wasn't the first. Somewhere in the abandoned halls of Building B, he's still waiting for the next unlucky soul to answer the call. If you ever hear a call button in an empty hospital, don't answer it. 3 stories, 3 glimpses into the unknown. But fear has no limits, and neither do the horrors that await. As you listen, remember, some things are better left unheard. Have you ever driven down an empty road late at night? No cars, no street lights, just the hum of your engine and the stretch of pavement ahead. Most people assume they're alone, but sometimes you're not. It happened 3 months ago. I was driving home from a friend's house, taking a back road through the countryside. It was late, around 2 a.m., and the highway was completely deserted. No houses, no towns, just miles of empty road. Then, up ahead, I saw him, a man standing in the middle of the highway. His clothes were dirty, torn in places. His head hung low, hiding his face. His arms hung loosely at his sides. I slowed down, my headlights washing over him. He didn't move. I pulled to a stop, rolling down my window slightly. "Hey, are you okay?" Silence. Something felt wrong. I checked my phone. No signal. I looked back at the road. He was closer. I hadn't seen him move. I slammed the window shut. My gut was screaming at me to leave. I put the car into reverse, ready to back away. That's when he lifted his head. His face wasn't right. It was blurred like a smudged painting. His mouth opened, but there were no teeth. Just blackness. I hit the gas. The car lurched backward, tires screeching. But as I reversed, he was still standing in front of me. No matter how far I drove, he never left my headlights. I was moving fast, 60 miles per hour in reverse, but he never got farther away. Then, he tilted his head, a slow, unnatural motion, and suddenly, he was right next to my window. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember hitting the gas. All I know is that I was suddenly speeding forward, heart pounding, gripping the wheel like my life depended on it. I glanced in the mirror. The road behind me was empty. He was gone. I made it home in record time, locked every door, and sat awake until the sun came up. The next morning, I told my dad what happened. His face went pale. He grabbed his phone, pulled up a local news article. 1 year ago, on that same stretch of road, a man had been hit by a car. The driver never stopped, and the last person who reported seeing him vanished. They never found his body. They say he still waits there, on that lonely stretch of highway, for someone to stop, for someone to see his face, for someone to take his place. If you ever see a man standing in the road at night, just keep driving. Some stories end, but the fear remains. Maybe tonight you'll forget what you've heard. Maybe you'll convince yourself it was just another tale. But when the lights go out and the silence creeps in, will you still feel alone? If you enjoy the chills and want more stories that haunt the night, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. There's always another nightmare waiting, and you wouldn't want to face it alone.